What's up, everyone? So welcome back to another Fantasy Friday today. So first of all, I want to point out that I did pick the Cleveland Browns to win this week. I showed in my Instagram video of me actually showing you guys my picks. A lot of people think I was crazy for picking the Browns. I was talking to somebody at school today, and he was asking me, what I thought about some of the fantasy value on some of the Browns. So I'll go over that a little bit in here, but the Browns are not the worst team in the NFL anymore. If you've been following, it's the Bills. So anybody on the Bills, I would stay away from, even LaShawn McCoy, because that offense is just terrible. Their defense is terrible. I mean, Vontae Davis retired at halftime on week 2. So what does that tell you? So anyways, let's move into some picks this week of who to pick up, who to drop, who to trade for. So let's get into that. I'm going to start off with the running back category. First of all, Carlos Hyde is somebody I've been big on. Even though he's on the Browns, he's somebody I've been big on. If you have a chance to trade for him now. He already has 4 touchdowns over the course of 3 games, and he's got a good schedule coming up. So I highly recommend trying to trade for him. More than likely, you should be able to find somebody who's willing to trade him, because he was taken at like RB3, RB4, pretty low, probably 5th, 6th, 7th round picks. So a lot of people are probably thinking they can trade him away for high, but he's actually going to be good throughout the course of the season. Somebody on the flip side of that who also has 4 touchdowns, but I'm saying to trade him away, is Isaiah Crowell. Reason being is the Jets just don't have a good team. In my personal opinion, they did really well week 1 against Detroit, but that's to be expected. Matthew Stafford always has a slow start. He's always really bad in his first couple games, and so that really showed up again, and the Jets dominated that game. But they've lost the last 2 games, and Crowell, as you can see, has a very, very low floor at like 3 to 4 points. But his ceiling is about 20, 22 points. And I think coming back from that 4-point game and getting a pretty good game tonight, or Thursday night, he will be somebody you can sell high. So I think you should get rid of him now. He has a tough schedule coming up. He's got Jacksonville, Chicago, Minnesota, a couple good run defenses. So I would get rid of him now while he's pretty high value. David Johnson is somebody I would go out and trade for. I know a lot of people are frustrated. They wasted a 1st-round pick on him. I think with him, people aren't going to be patient enough to wait for somebody who's going to produce for them. So I think his stock value is pretty low. He's got a really good schedule. He plays the Niners twice, who have a shoddy defense, and they let a lot of run through. So I think he's somebody you can go out and get and maybe pick up for relatively cheap. I don't think you have to pay that first pick draft price tag for him. I think you might be able to get away with like a 4th round draft pick price tag. Moving on to wide receivers. One of the wide receivers I was big on in the drafts, and I drafted him a lot, even though he had a 4-game suspension, was Julian Edelman. So he is owned in 84.5% of the NFL leagues. So if you're able to pick him up on the waiver wires, I would do that, because once he comes back, he'll be in week 5. He'll be healthy. He'll be fresh. He's the slot receiver, especially in PPR. You'll get a lot of points with him on just catches alone. And Brady and him have a pretty good rapport. So I would trade for him or pick him up on the waiver wire. If you trade for him, you can get him for relatively cheap. You could probably trade a Chris Hogan or a Corey Davis or something for him. One of the guys I would waiver add is Kenny Golladay. He's only 45.5% owned, and I think he's a great waiver add and a great flex spot. His numbers keep going up. He's establishing a rapport with Matthew Stafford, and he looks to be pretty elusive at times when he catches the ball and runs after yards after the catch. There we go. That's what I was looking for. So I would definitely look into him. Antonio Brown is basically my number 1 pick person I would try to go for. As you can see, the Steelers have been doing pretty bad. People are probably super frustrated that they wasted a first round pick on him. Regardless of that, he's still the number one receiver in my book. He's a really good guy. I think you can get him off some frustrated owners. You may have to pay first round price for him just because he's Antonio Brown, but I think it will be worth it in the end. They do play, a pretty easy schedule, so I would go out and get him now and just reap the benefits later. So let's move on to tight end. Tight end position is always tricky, in my opinion. I think it's one of the hardest positions to fill. Even though you only have one person you have to start, there are very, very few tight ends that do well throughout the course of the year. My obvious pick for this year was George Kittle, but the ones I want to talk about today are Will Dissly. He's the number one tight end right now in points, and he's only owned in 31.5% of the leagues out there. I think he's a good waiver add. I wouldn't trade for him, but I would definitely waiver add him if he's there. Because if you've got a struggling tight end, like you drafted Njoku or somebody else that's just not producing points, definitely go out and get him. Jesse James is another waiver add. He's only in 24.3% of leagues owned. So I think he's another waiver add you should go get. I see Jesse James as the new Heath Miller. For some of you older Steeler fans out there, you know who I'm talking about. He's becoming very reliable for Big Ben to throw to get some of those third down conversions. Yes, he only has one touchdown over the course of 2 weeks, but tight ends getting touchdowns is pretty low unless you're Kelsey or Gronk or Olsen. But I think he's still a good add. And then the last one I talk about in tight end is O.J. Howard. I think you trade him away. Coming off of that big game, he had a good first week, 5-6 points. It's kind of solid for standard. I think it was like 9 points for PPR, and then he had a pretty good week with the second week. I think the Fitz magic is going to die down a little bit. I think Fitzpatrick's going to kind of come back down and be at his normal level to where he throws an interception or two and only throws maybe 2 touchdowns. And plus, there's a lot of mouths to feed over there in Tampa. You got O.J. Howard, you've got Mike Evans, you got Deshaun Jackson, you got the running back. So there's a lot of people, a lot of weapons over there, and they don't necessarily, in my opinion, think that they're going to continue this very, very hot streak that they've had as far as scoring goes, because their schedule is going to get a little bit harder. So I'm going to move down to defenses here. This is the last section I'm going to talk about today. Like I've been saying, quarterback position is super deep, and I just don't talk about kickers because really, if you don't have Greg Zerulian or Gronkowski, you're just flavor of the weekend, or maybe sticking with a Mason Crosby. So the defense, the number one defense this week that I would play is the Bears. Now the Bears have been doing really, really good. They're going to go up against the Cardinals, who Week 1, Washington scored 13 points against them defense-wise, and then the LA Rams, also their defense scored 13 points against Arizona. So the Bears, I'm thinking 13 points at least is what they should be putting up. Obviously, it doesn't mean anything that other people scored 13 points. I mean, they could just tank and the Cardinals go off. Who knows? But based on statistical numbers and the way that the defense has been going and how well Khalil Mack has been melding with that defense, it's probably the best defense that is out on the waiver wires to pick up. The next two are a little bit lower, but Cowboys versus Seahawks, I would definitely look into that one. Denver scored 13 points against the Seahawks, and then Chicago scored 17 against the Seahawks. So whereas the Seahawks are at home, they have been struggling with their offense. So look to see that the Cowboys maybe capitalize on that and maybe they score some points there. I'm thinking they'll probably score about 8 to 10 in that game. I don't think it'll be as high as 13 or 17 because their defense isn't as strong as the Bears or the Broncos. But look about 8 to 10, I think. And then the last one is the Bucs versus the Steelers. The Steelers have been playing awful. I hope Big Ben can turn it around for Antonio Brown's sake and some of the other fantasy owners out there. But the Buccaneers have been doing somewhat good, and Cleveland scored 16 points with their defense against the Steelers, whereas KC was a -3, but KC overcame it with their high point total. So KC's defense is pretty soft this year. They're relying heavily on their offense. So I wouldn't look too much at KC's blunder there, but I think the Bucks, it's kind of a deep one. If you're really hurting and a lot of defenses are gone that are good, I would try the Bucks out. I think maybe bottom end you'll get 3 to 6. Top end you may get 10 to 12. So that's what I got for you guys this week for fantasy. Like I said, I was surprised at how good the Thursday night game was. Because when I saw Browns and Jets, I was a little bit of an elitist, and I said, this is probably going to be a boring game. And it turned out to be a great game. I was thoroughly surprised with both teams. So, but like I said, I picked the Browns. I'm happy that I picked that one because I think a lot of people didn't expect the Browns to win. But hey, I feel like the Browns are much better than people are giving them credit for. I think that front office change that they did, they've really put their heads together and are starting to build an actual football team. So I don't think they're going to be Super Bowl bound this year, but hey, you never know. They could go in the next couple of years. So that's what I got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it helps you with your fantasy teams. I hope you guys get something, one of these guys to add to your team and they do good for you. So I'll see you guys next week and hope you have a wonderful day and God bless.